Jack Reynolds was a man with two lives. Most people saw him as a calm, friendly pilot who loved to fly small, fast planes. They called him Captain Jack, and he always had a ready smile and a story about flying over sunny beaches. But deep down, Jack had a big secret. He wasn't just any pilot. He was a brave pilot for the DEA, a special group that stops bad guys from doing bad things. His real job was to catch people who smuggled illegal stuff, and right now, he was on his most dangerous mission yet. His secret mission was to join a group of very bad men who moved things they shouldn't across the big ocean. Jack had to pretend he was one of them, a pilot who would help them fly their secret cargo. It was like playing a big game of dress-up, but if he made one mistake, the game could turn very, very scary. He knew he had to be smart, quick, and never, ever let his true self show. Jack spent weeks getting ready for this big trick. He grew a little beard and changed his haircut. He practiced a new way of talking, making sure he sounded just like the other pilots he'd heard about in the smuggling world. He learned all about different kinds of private planes, even ones he'd never flown before, just in case he needed to sound super smart about them. He wore nice, simple clothes like a fancy pilot might, but not too fancy. He wanted to look like someone who knew how to get things done, not a cop. He was in his early 40s, and his eyes, though kind, held a knowing look from many years of flying and seeing a lot of the world. The day he was finally going to meet the bad guys, Jack felt a mix of nerves and excitement. He sat in a small, quiet room, looking at a picture of the boss he was going to meet. Mr. Delgado. The man had a hard face and cold eyes. Jack knew that Mr. Delgado was very smart and very dangerous. He couldn't afford to slip up, not even for a second. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the little butterflies dancing in his stomach. This was it. This was the moment he stepped fully into his pretend life. He thought about his old plane, the one he used for real DEA missions. He missed the feeling of flying it, knowing he was doing good. But now he had to put all that aside. He had to be Captain Jack, the pilot who didn't care what was in the plane as long as the money was good. He had to think like them, act like them, and, most importantly, fool them completely. He reminded himself of the goal, to stop these bad guys and make the world a safer place. That thought gave him strength. Jack checked his watch. It was time to go. He picked up his worn leather flight bag, which held only a few clothes and his fake pilot's license. No guns, no secret radios, nothing that would give him away. He had to rely only on his wits and his skill as a pilot. He walked out of the room, leaving his true self behind for a while. He was no longer Jack Reynolds, the brave DEA agent. He was Captain Jack, ready to fly for anyone, anywhere for a price. He headed towards a dusty, hidden airstrip where the real danger was waiting for him, just beyond the tree line. The dusty airstrip was hidden deep in a green jungle, far from any towns or busy roads. It was just a long, rough patch of dirt with a small, dark hangar at one end. Jack walked with a confident stride, his worn leather bag swinging easily at his side. He saw a few men standing near a fancy-looking private jet, a sleek white plane that looked out of place in such a wild spot. These men wore dark clothes and looked serious. They watched him carefully as he got closer. Jack kept his face friendly, but not too eager. He gave a small nod to the men, acting like he belonged there. One of the men, a big fellow with a shaved head, stepped forward. "You Captain Jack?" He grunted, his voice deep and rough. "That's me," Jack said, his voice calm and steady, just like he'd practiced. "Ready to fly. Whenever you are." He made sure to look the man right in the eye, showing no fear. The big man just stared for a moment, then waved a hand towards the hangar. "He's waiting." Jack walked into the cool, dim hangar. Inside, it smelled of oil and old fuel. In the middle of the room, a man sat at a small, metal table. This had to be Mr. Delgado. He was a man with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore a crisp white shirt and looked very important, even in this hidden place. Next to him stood another guard, even bigger than the one outside. Mr. Delgado didn't smile. He just looked at Jack, from his scuffed shoes to his neatly combed hair. It felt like a long, quiet minute. Jack kept his face still, his hands relaxed at his sides. He knew this was a test. He had to show he was a pilot, not a nervous newcomer. "So, you're the famous Captain Jack," Mr. Delgado said, his voice smooth like silk, but with an edge of steel underneath. They say you can fly anything. I can fly anything with wings, Mr. Delgado, Jack replied, his voice clear. He even managed a small, confident smile. And I get where I'm going on time every time. He made sure to sound a little proud, like a pilot who knew his worth. Mr. Delgado picked up a small, shiny silver lighter and slowly lit a cigar. Smoke curled around his face. Reliability is important, Captain. Very important in my business. He took a puff, his eyes still fixed on Jack. You understand that, yes? I understand that a job done right is a job that gets paid, Jack said, keeping his eyes on Mr. Delgado's. He didn't blink. He knew the boss was trying to make him nervous to see if he was real or fake. But Jack had faced much tougher challenges in his real job. He thought about the dangers he'd faced as a DEA agent, and that made him strong. Good, Mr. Delgado finally said, a tiny smile playing on his lips. It wasn't a friendly smile, but it showed Jack had passed the first test. We have a flight to make. Across the Gulf. Tonight. Jack nodded. No problem. I just need to check the plane, make sure everything's in order. He wanted to sound like a professional pilot who always checked his aircraft. It was part of keeping his cover, acting like a pilot who cared about his plane, even if it wasn't his. The plane is ready, Mr. Delgado said, waving a hand dismissively. My men have checked it. Jack felt a little alarm bell ring in his head. He always checked planes himself. Not being able to do a full check was risky, but he couldn't argue. That would make him seem like he was questioning the boss. Of course, Jack said smoothly. Just a quick look around, then we'll be good to go. He tried to make it sound like a normal part of his routine, not a challenge. Mr. Delgado took another puff of his cigar. Very well, but quickly, Captain. Time is money. He stood up, a sign that their meeting was over. He was taller than Jack expected, and his presence filled the small hangar. Jack gave another nod. He turned and walked towards the white jet, feeling Mr. Delgado's eyes on his back. He knew he had to act fast and pretend to check the plane without really checking it. His heart was beating a little faster now, not from fear, but from the thrill of the dangerous game he was playing. He was right in the middle of the lion's den, and he had to be smarter than all the lions. He opened the door to the plane, stepping inside, ready for whatever came next. He was Captain Jack, and he was here to fly. Jack stepped inside the sleek white jet, pretending to look it over. He walked down the short aisle, touching the soft leather seats, making it seem like he was checking everything. In truth, he was quickly looking for anything out of place, any hidden wires or strange smells. He didn't find anything obvious, but the feeling of not doing a real, careful check made a knot form in his stomach. He went into the cockpit, a small room filled with blinking lights and many buttons. He sat in the pilot's seat, feeling the controls, getting a feel for the plane he was about to fly. It was a beautiful machine, but a plane was only as good as the pilot flying it and the mechanics who kept it safe. Just as Jack was about to get out and tell Mr. Delgado he was ready, a loud, angry shout echoed from outside the plane. Where is he? Mr. Delgado's voice boomed, much louder and angrier than before. Jack quickly went to the plane door and looked out. Mr. Delgado stood with his arms crossed, his face dark with anger. He was talking to the big guard from earlier, who looked very nervous. Another man, thin and sweaty, ran up to them, speaking quickly in a low voice. What's wrong? Jack asked, trying to sound helpful, like a pilot who just wanted to get the job done. Mr. Delgado spun around, his eyes like fire. The pilot, the one who was supposed to fly this plane. He's not here. He ran away. He kicked at the dirt, sending a small cloud of dust into the air. He's gone. He left a message saying he was sick, but I know better. He's a coward. A cold shiver ran down Jack's spine, but it wasn't from fear. It was from a sudden rush of excitement. This was a huge problem for Mr. Delgado, but it was also a big chance for Jack. A very risky chance. Mr. Delgado started pacing, talking loudly to his men. Find another pilot. Now, this flight must go tonight. But Jack knew it wasn't easy to find a skilled private jet pilot in the middle of a jungle, especially one who would fly for a cartel boss on short notice. Jack took a deep breath. This was it. He had to make his move. He had to pretend he could fly this plane, even though it wasn't part of the original plan. His mission was to infiltrate, not necessarily to fly the boss himself. But if he didn't, the whole operation might fall apart. He had to be bold. "Mr. Delgado," Jack said, his voice cutting through the angry chatter. He walked slowly down the steps of the plane, making sure all eyes were on him. "There's no need to worry." Mr. Delgado stopped pacing and glared at Jack. "No need to worry, Captain. My pilot has abandoned me. This is a very big worry." "Not for me, sir," Jack said, puffing out his chest just a little. He made sure his voice was calm and steady, full of confidence. "I told you, I can fly anything with wings. This plane is ready. I'm ready." He gestured towards a jet. "I can take you across the Gulf. Tonight. No problem." Silence fell over the airstrip. Mr. Delgado looked at Jack, his sharp eyes trying to see into Jack's very soul. The other guards also stared, wondering if this Captain Jack was crazy or just very brave. Jack knew this was the most important moment of his disguise. He had to sell it completely. He had to look like a pilot who saw a job, not a DEA agent seeing an opportunity. "You?" Mr. Delgado finally said, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. "You would fly it?" "Yes, sir," Jack replied, without a moment's hesitation. "That's what I do. I fly planes. You need a pilot, and I'm here. It's simple." He tried to make it sound like the most natural thing in the world. Mr. Delgado chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Captain Jack, you are either very brave or very foolish." He took a step closer to Jack. "If you fail, Captain, if anything goes wrong with this flight, it will not be good for you. Do you understand?" Jack met his gaze, his heart thumping hard in his chest. "I understand, Mr. Delgado. I never fail." He knew the risk was enormous. Flying a plane he hadn't fully checked, with a dangerous cartel boss on board, into an unknown situation. But this was his chance to get closer, to learn more. This was his chance to truly become Captain Jack. "Good," Mr. Delgado said, turning towards the plane. "Then let's go. Get us in the air, Captain, and make sure we get there fast." Jack nodded, a small, hidden thrill running through him. He turned and walked back up the steps of the jet, heading for the cockpit. He was no longer just pretending to be a pilot. He was about to become one for real, for the most dangerous passenger he'd ever had. The mission had just taken a sharp, unexpected turn, and Jack was ready to fly straight into it. "Begin." Back in the cockpit, Jack quickly strapped himself into the pilot's seat. His hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, even though this particular model of jet was new to him. He knew the basics of flying any plane, and the advanced ones were all pretty similar once you understood the main parts. He flipped switches, pressed buttons, and watched the dials light up, making it look like he did this every single day. He made sure his movements were smooth and confident, not hurried or unsure. This wasn't just about flying. It was about acting. Through the cockpit window, he saw Mr. Delgado and his two big guards walking towards the plane. They got on board, and one of the guards closed the main door with a heavy thud. Jack could feel the plane settle as they took their seats in the back, away from him. He could hear their voices, low and rumbling, but he kept his focus on the controls. He took a deep breath, telling himself, "You've got this, Captain Jack." He called out to the ground crew, using the right lingo, asking them to remove the wheel chocks and clear the runway. The jet's engines roared to life, a powerful, deep sound that made the whole plane tremble slightly. Jack checked his instruments one last time. Everything looked good, or at least everything looked good. He's still worried about that pre-flight check he wasn't allowed to do. Slowly, carefully, Jack guided the big jet down the rough, dirt runway. The plane bounced a little, but he kept it straight. He pushed the throttle forward, and the engines screamed louder. The plane picked up speed, faster and faster, rushing past the dark trees that lined the airstrip. He could feel the plane wanting to lift, eager to be in the sky. Then, with a gentle pull on the control stick, Jack lifted the nose. The powerful jet climbed into the night sky, leaving the hidden jungle airstrip behind. The ground lights below quickly became tiny dots, then vanished altogether. Up here, it was just the dark sky, a few twinkling stars, and the endless expanse of the Gulf of Mexico stretching out before them. Jack settled into the rhythm of the flight. He kept his eyes on the instruments, making small adjustments to keep the plane steady. He acted like he flew planes like this all the time, which in a way he did. Just usually for different reasons and with different passengers. He could feel Mr. Delgado's eyes on him sometimes, even from the back of the plane. He knew the boss was watching, judging his every move. The cabin was quiet, only the soft hum of the engines breaking the silence. Jack could hear the distant murmur of Mr. Delgado talking to his men, but he couldn't make out the words. He wondered what they were carrying, what kind of illegal cargo was hidden in the plane's belly. He also wondered what his next move would be. He had gotten himself into the heart of the smuggling ring. But what now? He was flying their plane, helping them, at least for now. He had to find a way to turn this flight into a win for the good guys, without giving himself away. The air outside was smooth at first, and the flight felt peaceful, almost too easy. Jack looked out at the dark ocean below, a vast, black sheet reflecting the faint starlight. He was in his element, flying. This was what he loved, even with the high stakes. He felt a strange mix of danger and freedom. He was playing a very risky game, but he was also in control, at least of the plane. He hoped he could stay in control of the mission, too. He glanced at the fuel gauge. Plenty of fuel. He checked the altimeter, showing their height above the water. Everything seemed normal, but Jack had a bad feeling, a small prickle on the back of his neck. He knew that in this line of work, things could change in a second. He gripped the controls a little tighter, ready for anything. And begin. The smooth flight across the Gulf of Mexico didn't last. Jack had been flying for about an hour, the soft hum of the engines almost lulling him into a sense of calm. He looked out the window, expecting to see the endless, dark ocean, but instead he saw something else, a wall of black clouds rising quickly from the horizon. They looked angry, full of lightning, and were moving fast. His gut clenched. A storm. A big one. And it wasn't on any of the weather reports he had seen before takeoff. "Looks like we're heading into some weather, Mr. Delgado," Jack announced over the plane's intercom, keeping his voice steady. He tried to sound like it was just a minor inconvenience, even though a part of him knew this was much more. Mr. Delgado's voice crackled back. "Just fly through it, Captain. We have no time to waste." Jack nodded, though Delgado couldn't see him. He flipped on the weather radar. The screen lit up with angry reds and purples, showing a massive storm system directly in their path. It was a squall line, a dangerous kind of storm with strong winds and heavy rain. He quickly checked his maps and tried to find a way around it, but it was too wide. They were trapped. "Sir, this is a severe storm. We might experience some turbulence," Jack warned, trying to prepare them without sounding scared. He tightened his grip on the controls. The plane entered the clouds, and immediately the ride became rough. The smooth hum turned into a loud roar as rain lashed against the windows like tiny rocks. Lightning flashed outside, turning the dark sky into a strobe light, showing brief, terrifying glimpses of the churning clouds. The plane began to shake violently, tossing Jack from side to side in his seat. A loud thud came from the back. What was that? Mr. Delgado's voice was sharp, no longer calm. Jack didn't answer. He was fighting to keep the plane steady. The wind was howling, pushing the jet up and down, left and right. It felt like a giant hand was trying to rip the wings off. He had flown in bad weather before, but this was different. This felt personal. Suddenly, the plane dropped sharply, like an elevator falling. Jack pushed the throttle forward, trying to gain control, his muscles straining. In the back, he heard shouts and the crash of something breaking. He glanced at the instrument panel. The artificial horizon, which showed if the plane was flying straight, was spinning wildly. He was flying blind, relying on his instincts and his years of training. Then, a warning light flashed on the panel. Engine 1 low oil pressure. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. Sabotage. He knew it. This wasn't just a storm. Someone had done something to the plane. The check Mr. Delgado's men had done before takeoff hadn't been a check. It had been a setup. And now, in the middle of a killer storm, one of his engines was failing. He tried to keep his face calm. But inside, he was a whirlwind of thoughts. If he showed any panic, Delgado would know something was wrong, and his cover would be blown. He also had to fix the engine, or at least keep it running, while battling the storm. "Captain, what is happening?" Delgado yelled through the intercom, his voice closer now. He must have left his seat. "Just turbulence, sir. Nothing I can't handle," Jack yelled back, making sure his voice sounded strong and confident, even as he wrestled with the controls. He quickly flipped a few switches, trying to send more oil to the failing engine, hoping it was just a temporary problem. He needed to keep his focus, keep flying, and keep his secret. This was no longer just a flight. It was a desperate fight for survival, and his life and his mission depended on him winning. End.